Think about the last time you were driving down a long, flat stretch of highway, on a really blisteringly hot afternoon.
Oh, right, with the sun just beating down on the asphalt.
Exactly. You look ahead, and right there on the road, you see that shimmering, silvery puddle of water. It looks completely real, but then the second you get close to it, it just vanishes.
Yeah, the classic highway heat shimmer. I mean, it's an optical illusion most of us experience and immediately just brush off, right? You would just think, oh, it's hot air bending the light. We file it away under predictable physical phenomena and keep driving.
Right, we don't give it a second thought. But what if that distortion you're seeing is actually, well, a glitch in the very fabric of time and space?
Which sounds completely wild, I know.
It does. But today, for this deep dive, we are opening up a wildly unconventional, truly mind-bending text that challenges mainstream science. It offers a radically different lens on the nature of reality.
We really are. We are digging into an excerpt from a book by an author named Shuafeng. It's titled, There is a Supernatural Soul in the Universe, 40 Evidence Proving the Existence of the Greatest Creator.
And we're going to focus specifically on what the author calls Evidence 36. It's an entire section dedicated to a startling theory about mirages.
But before we go any further, I think we need to clearly state our mission for today's deep dive.
Yes, absolutely, the disclaimer.
Right. We are here to impartially unpack the author's unique framework. We are not endorsing these supernatural viewpoints, and we aren't treating them as scientific fact.
No, not at all.
Our goal is just to explore the fascinating way this author systematically attempts to reconstruct our fundamental understanding of optics, time, and space.
It really is an incredible exercise in looking at the world through a completely different lens. And, to understand this new lens, we have to start with what the author is actually trying to dismantle.
Right, the mainstream view.
Exactly. He spends a massive portion of this text taking aim at the standard scientific explanation of a mirage.
And he is incredibly methodical about it, too. To really grasp his critique, we first have to establish the meteorological view that he's arguing against.
Textbook science we all learned in school.
Right. The scientific consensus is that mirages are an atmospheric optical phenomenon caused by light refraction, or total reflection. And this happens because extreme temperature changes create different air densities.
So like hot sand in a desert heats the air right above it.
Exactly. While the air higher up stays cooler.
So because of thermal expansion, that lower hot air is less dense and the upper cold air is denser. And when light from a distant object passes through those contrasting layers, it actually physically bends.
That bending changes the refractive index. The text compares it to looking at a chopstick inserted into a bowl of water.
Oh, yeah, where it looks snapped in half.
Right. The chopstick appears broken at the waterline because the light is traveling through air and then through water at totally different speeds. Science argues that this exact same bending effect happens in the sky, casting distant earthly landscapes into the air as an optical illusion.
Which is the standard definition. But the author looks at that explanation and essentially says, no, the physics don't actually hold up to scrutiny.
He really goes after it.
Yeah.
He interrogates this with a rapid-fire list of questions, starting with the very concept of the distant landscape itself.
He demands specifics, doesn't he?
He really does. The scientific model relies on a mirage being a reflection of a physical object somewhere far away on Earth. The author challenges this by asking, well, how far is distant?
Right.
And with all the highly detailed mirages recorded throughout history, castles, ancient cities, distinct mountain ranges, he asks why scientists haven't ever found the exact matching earthly landscapes that supposedly correspond to those floating images.
It is kind of a glaring question. I mean, if you see a highly specific medieval tower up in the clouds and light needs an origin point to bounce off of, shouldn't there be an identical medieval tower somewhere on the ground?
Following that exact logic, he goes after the physics of the reflection itself. Objects on Earth only reflect light upwards toward the sky. So the author asks how that light suddenly decides to reflect from the empty sky back down to our eyes.
Right. Why does it U-turn?
Exactly. Now, he does acknowledge the scientific counterargument of n-fold refraction.
Which means the light bends multiple times as it moves through various atmospheric layers, right?
Yes. Exactly.
Let me try to visualize that mechanism for a second. If we think of the atmosphere's temperature layers like the surface of a lake, n-fold refraction is essentially like skipping a stone.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, like if you throw a stone straight down, it just sinks. That's light hitting the ground. But if you throw it at a shallow enough angle, it skips across the dense layer of water. So science is saying the light from a distant city is skipping off the dense layer of cold air in the sky and bouncing back to our eyes.
That is the exact mechanical theory, yes.
Yeah.
But the author rejects this entirely. He calls it a theoretical perfection that simply doesn't exist in reality.
Why does he say that?
Well, he argues that if n-fold refraction worked so flawlessly, the atmosphere would basically be a constant hall of mirrors. We would be seeing n-fold refracted mirages every single day, everywhere.
And obviously we don't. Which brings him to geography. He points out that if this is purely a matter of hot sand and cold air, why do some deserts go decades without a single mirage?
It's a fair point. And he even brings up a specific historical anomaly to challenge the whole temperature rule. He talks about a famous mirage that appeared on the Penglai Peninsula in Shandong on December 16, 2002.
Which was right in the middle of freezing winter.
Exactly. He uses that winter date to completely defy the summer heat requirement that people typically associate with mirages.
I remember he even mocks the modern experts a bit there.
He does. He mocks the experts who tried to explain away the frequent Penglai mirages by blaming them on recent environmental cleanup efforts. He literally calls that politicians' language.
Because he points out that before the Industrial Revolution, the air was vastly cleaner everywhere, yet mirages weren't a daily occurrence back then either. But, I have to throw a flag on the play here regarding his winter mirage argument.
Oh, how so?
He's treating all mirages as if science only blames them on hot ground. But there is a deeply established scientific phenomenon called a fata morgana.
Ah, yes, the superior mirage.
Right. It's a complex mirage that specifically happens in the cold. It occurs when a layer of warm air rests on top of a layer of freezing air, usually over icy water.
Which is exactly the geographical setup of the Penglai Peninsula in the winter.
Yes. So he's pointing at a winter mirage and saying, look, the hot sand theory is broken, while completely ignoring that atmospheric physics already has a separate, well-documented explanation for cold weather mirages.
That's a really solid counterpoint.
It just feels like he expects the Earth's atmosphere to behave like a perfectly manufactured funhouse mirror. The atmosphere is a chaotic, swirling soup of moisture, barometric pressure, and shifting wind. Is it really fair of him to demand laboratory perfection from a messy natural phenomenon?
Well, see, he views that chaos not as a feature of nature, but as proof that the foundational premise of the science is flawed. He demands consistency. And when atmospheric science admits to chaotic variables, he just sees an opening.
Because he has a totally different theory ready to go.
Exactly. Because if it's not an atmospheric trick of the light, he has a much grander explanation ready to take its place.
Let's look at his alternative, then. Because he replaces the bent chopstick theory with something massive. The core thesis of Evidence 36 is that a mirage is actually a deliberate revelation arranged by what he calls the greatest creator.
It's a huge leap.
It is. He says it is a localized distortion of time and space, revealing a drop of the Elysium world, which he claims exists in 36-dimensional spaces.
And to accept this, we really have to engage with his underlying philosophy of reality. He argues that our material world, the rivers, the trees, the solar system, that is the actual illusion.
Wait, our physical world is the illusion?
Yes. He uses terms like the Rotary River Galaxy and the Law Rotary Galaxy to describe our universe.
Let me stop you there. Rotary River Galaxy. Is he just renaming the Milky Way, or is that like a larger cosmological concept?
It's his way of completely recategorizing all material reality. He believes that everything we consider solid and real is simply energy trapped in low, bounded states.
Okay, so dense energy.
Right. The higher the energy, the less form it takes. He quotes the concept that emptiness is not empty and form is not real.
So the physical universe is just a dense, low-level construct.
Exactly. The Elysium world, occupying these 36-dimensional spaces, is the true, non-illusory reality according to him. A mirage is just a temporary thinning of the veil between our low-energy illusion and that high-energy truth.
Okay, but if this profound, true reality is surrounding us constantly, why are we entirely blind to it except for these rare, fleeting glimpses in deserts or over the ocean?
He offers a two-part explanation for that. The first part is purely biological. He says human beings only perceive less than 3% of the existing world.
Less than 3%.
Yeah. We lack the visual structure to see ultraviolet rays, gamma rays, or what he calls biological waves. We are physically unequipped to see the Elysium world.
Honestly, that biological limitation tracks with basic physics. We only see a tiny sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum, but his second reason pivots away from biology entirely, doesn't it?
It does. It moves straight into the spiritual. He claims we cannot see this 36-dimensional space because our merits and virtues have not reached the required standard.
Merits and virtues.
Yes. He compares it to an average civilian wondering why they can't simply walk in and stay at the White House, the Kremlin, or Zhanaanhai.
And see, this analogy really bothers me.
Really? Why?
It equates spiritual enlightenment with high-level government security clearance. It frames the universe as this exclusive, energetic VIP lounge where you need a certain status to enter. The White House has armed guards to prevent physical threats, not because tourists lack moral purity.
Well, to be fair, the author isn't talking about physical security. He is proposing that the universe operates on a strict energetic hierarchy.
Like a frequency.
It's exactly like a frequency. Just as a radio needs to be tuned to a specific frequency to catch a broadcast, a human consciousness requires a specific energetic resonance to perceive these 36-dimensional spaces.
And he claims we achieve that resonance through merits and virtues.
Right. Without that resonance, the Elysium world is literally invisible to you.
So the Mirage is basically a localized broadcast that temporarily overrides our normal frequency.
Yes, that's a great way to think about it.
But this interference doesn't just affect space, right? The text delves pretty heavily into how this alternate reality manipulates the actual mechanics of time.
It does. He divides time into two geometric categories: longitudinal time and latitudinal time.
He puts our material human timeline on the x-axis. That's longitudinal time, just moving forward linearly.
Like a straight line.
Right. But he claims the Elysium world operates on a z-axis, latitudinal time, shooting off perpendicularly. So entering a Mirage is essentially like a needle skipping a track on a vinyl record?
Well, it's even more dramatic than skipping a track. It's like the needle lifting off the spinning record entirely and just hovering.
Whoa, okay.
The record keeps spinning, meaning time on Earth continues to pass. But the needle suspended in the air isn't experiencing that forward motion at all. Entering a Mirage drops you off the x-axis of the mortal world and suspends you on the z-axis of the supernatural world.
To prove this z-axis mechanism, he pulls up two modern historical anecdotes. Let's look at the first one from Gallipoli on January 28, 1915.
Right, this is a heavily debated wartime incident. The text details a Turkish army advancing toward the 60th position.
During the battle.
Yes. As they climbed a hill, witnesses report that several clouds descended vertically and just silently enveloped the soldiers. Metallic beams of light supposedly shot out of these clouds.
Metallic beams? That sounds almost sci-fi.
It really does. A witness named Lifechanyuan watched his comrades march into this fog, appearing totally deaf to their surroundings, and they vanished completely without a trace.
An entire army just disappears.
That's the claim.
And he pairs this with an incident from 1994 off the African coast, involving an Italian passenger plane.
Right. The plane vanishes from radar screens in the control room for 20 solid minutes.
20 minutes is a long time to lose a plane.
It's terrifying for air traffic control. But when it eventually lands, the crew is completely bewildered by the panic on the ground. To them, it was a perfectly continuous flight.
But there's a catch with their watches.
A huge catch.
Yeah.
When they check, all 315 passengers and crew members find their watches are exactly 20 minutes slow.
The watches being uniformly slow is a fantastic detail for a story. But again, I have to challenge the logic of using these specific events as proof.
You're skeptical.
Very. The author is taking a 1994 radar glitch and a terrifying, chaotic disappearance from a 1915 battlefield and holding them up as rock-solid proof of a literal z-axis of time.
It's a stretch.
It feels like losing your car keys and the couch cushions and concluding they fell into the fourth dimension. Why leap past the highly documented realities of technical radar errors or the fog of war?
I mean, from a critical thinking perspective, utilizing undocumented anomalies as foundational pillars for a 36-dimensional theory is incredibly shaky. I agree.
Right.
But within the internal logic of the author's framework, the plane incident is the perfect demonstration of latitudinal time.
How so?
The fact that the passengers experienced no gap in their consciousness is the mechanism at work. On the z-axis, 0 time elapsed for them. But on our x-axis, the record kept spinning for 20 minutes.
Okay, so we understand the geometric mechanics he is proposing, but that leaves the most crucial question. Why does the greatest creator orchestrate these glitches in the first place?
That is the big question.
To answer this, the text pivots away from battlefields and radar screens and offers a deeply mythological anecdote from the author's own childhood.
Yeah, he shares a story his grandmother told him about a lost woodcutter. And this story reveals the underlying purpose of these dimensional reveals.
Walk us through the story.
So the woodcutter is working on a familiar mountain when he becomes totally disoriented. He wanders into this beautiful area and spots two old men playing chess.
Just casually playing chess in the woods.
Right. And not wanting to interrupt, he just squats down to watch them play.
And this is where the mechanics of time dilation become visible, right?
Exactly. As he watches the game, he notices the leaves on the trees next to him. They are rapidly turning from yellow to green and then back from green to yellow.
So seasons are just passing in the blink of an eye?
Yes. The x-axis is accelerating wildly while he sits suspended on the z-axis. Eventually, the old men just vanish. The woodcutter, shaken, walks back down the mountain to his village.
But centuries have passed in longitudinal time. He doesn't recognize the village or the people.
No one knows him.
Right. And when he asks about his contemporaries, he is told they are long-dead ancestors. When he asks about his own name, the villagers say he was a grandfather who vanished on the mountain centuries ago.
It's a beautifully haunting narrative. But the author's focus is on the spiritual mechanics of the event. He asks the reader, why didn't the woodcutter just vanish permanently into the Elysium world like the Turkish army supposedly did?
And the answer circles back to that VIP lounge concept we talked about earlier.
It does.
His spiritual quality, his merits and virtues simply weren't high enough to remain in that higher energetic state.
Exactly. The author claims those two chess players weren't random entities. They were actually the woodcutter's relatives from a past life.
Oh, wow.
Yet deliberately sent to awaken him. They orchestrated this tiny, localized time dilation to prove to him that a greater reality exists. It was to plant a seed so he could begin cultivating the merits needed to enter it in a future life.
So it's essentially a spiritual wake-up call.
That's the idea.
But, if the greatest creator genuinely wants humanity to elevate our spiritual merits, why utilize such incredibly cryptic communication?
Cryptic is one word for it.
Sending past life friends to play a silent game of chess in front of a random woodcutter in the woods. It's like sending a vitally important email straight to humanity's spam folder.
I love that analogy.
Why not just place an undeniable massive billboard in the sky?
Well, this touches on a tension present in almost all mystical texts. Divine revelation is rarely a billboard. It operates as a filter.
A filter.
Yes. The author would likely argue that if the Elysian world provided undeniable empirical proof to everyone on Earth, free will and spiritual growth would just collapse into mere compliance.
Oh, I see. You'd just be behaving because you saw the billboard, not because you grew spiritually.
Exactly. The cryptic, fleeting nature of the mirage is the test itself. It requires the observer to actively seek the truth behind the illusion.
That makes sense within his framework.
The author points to figures like Jesus and Buddha who abandoned all material wealth. He argues they weren't swindlers because there is no material benefit in deceiving the poor.
Right, they had nothing to gain.
Right. They abandoned the x-axis entirely because they achieved the resonance to see the z-axis clearly.
That really forces us to look at our own relationship with reality.
It definitely does.
Whether you firmly trust the atmospheric science of fata morganas and light refraction, or you find yourself captivated by the concept of 36-dimensional spaces, this text demands that we stop taking our perception for granted.
It's a wake-up call for the reader, really.
It challenges us to look at the mundane, a heat shimmer on the horizon or losing track of 20 minutes on a dull commute, and ask if there's a layer of existence operating quietly right beneath the surface.
And the authors claim that we perceive less than 3% of the world as a profound place to anchor that final thought.
Yeah, that 3% number is staggering.
Ironically, that number aligns beautifully with modern astrophysics.
Wait, really?
Yes. Science tells us that all visible matter, everything we can touch, see, and measure, makes up roughly 5% of the universe.
Only 5%.
The vast majority is dark matter and dark energy, forces we know exist mathematically but simply cannot perceive. Add to that the massive spectrums of light and sound our biology just flat out ignores.
So our own science essentially admits we are functionally blind to 95% of the universe.
Exactly. So what if the merits and virtues the author insists we need aren't magical gatekeepers at all?
What else could they be?
What if they are simply untranslated, heightened cognitive states that human biology hasn't evolved to unlock yet?
Oh, wow.
If our current biological hardware restricts us to a tiny fraction of reality, what else is happening in the other 95% of the room you're sitting in right now?
Now that is a thought that will change how you look at the empty air around you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.